Someone offers you two envelopes. One has $1 million in it, the other has nothing. You pick one, open it, and it's empty. Most people's first reaction, I made the wrong call. Actually, you don't know that. A good decision and a good outcome are not the same thing. And mixing the two up is one of the most expensive mental habits you can have. We judge our own thinking by how things turned out, not by whether the reasoning was sound. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. Sometimes you do everything wrong and still win. The result doesn't tell you much about the quality of the process that produced it, but our brains treat it like it does. That distinction is the difference between someone who actually gets better at deciding things over a lifetime and someone who just gets luckier or unluckier and calls it skill. Most of your decisions today will take seconds. Which email to answer first, whether to say something in a meeting, what to eat. None of it feels significant while it's happening. But a handful of these small, forgettable decisions, repeated 1,000 times over a decade, are what actually build the life you end up with. I spent a while pulling apart how military strategists, surgeons, professional investors, and pilots actually think under pressure, expecting to find 5 unrelated toolkits. Instead, I found the same handful of mental moves showing up again and again, dressed differently depending on the field. Here are 5 of them. And the first one comes from a mistake that almost got a generation of bomber pilots killed. In 1943, the US military had a problem. Bombers were coming back from missions in Europe covered in bullet holes, wings shredded, fuselages punched through, and engineers wanted to know where to add armor. Steel is heavy, so they couldn't just plate the whole aircraft. They had to choose. The obvious move, look at the returning planes, map every bullet hole, and reinforce wherever the damage clustered. Wings and tail, that's where the holes were. A statistician named Abraham Wald, working with the military statistical research group, looked at the same maps and told them they had it backwards. Reinforce the engines in the cockpit, the places with almost no bullet holes, not the wings. His reasoning, they were only looking at planes that made it home. A bomber hit in the engine or the cockpit usually didn't come back at all. The bullet holes on the surviving planes showed exactly where a plane could get shot and still fly. The empty spots on the map weren't safe zones. They were the spots nobody survived getting hit in. This is survivorship bias, and it's not a World War II curiosity. It's running quietly under a lot of modern advice. We study the habits of people who got rich and try to copy them without asking how many people did the exact same thing and went broke. Those people don't get interviewed. They don't get books written about them. They're the missing bullet holes. It shows up smaller too. A friend doesn't text back for 6 hours, and your brain fills the silence immediately. They're mad at you. You said something wrong. They're pulling away. None of that is a fact. The only fact is they haven't replied yet. Everything else is a story your brain wrote to make an uncomfortable gap feel resolved. Before you react to anything uncertain, it's worth asking 2 separate questions. What do I actually know? And what am I filling in myself? Keeping those 2 piles apart is most of what separates careful thinkers from people who confidently act on stories they invented an hour ago. That handles bad information. But even with perfect information, there's a second trap waiting, and it's the reason professional poker players can make a flawless decision and still walk away from the table with nothing. A professional poker player gets dealt a strong hand, plays it exactly the way the odds say to, and still loses the pot. Did they play it badly? No. A good decision raises your odds. It doesn't guarantee the result. This is the actual dividing line between amateurs and professionals in almost any high-stakes field. No investor knows which stock is going up. No doctor knows with total certainty that a treatment will work on this specific patient. No pilot knows exactly what the weather will do in 6 hours. The people who are actually good at these jobs stop asking, will this work? And start asking, given what I know right now, what's the most likely outcome? And is that outcome good enough to act on? The political scientist Philip Tetlock spent 2 decades tracking the predictions of hundreds of self-described experts, pundits, analysts, forecasters, and found something uncomfortable. The experts who spoke with the most confidence weren't the most accurate ones, often the opposite. Confidence and accuracy barely correlated at all. Certainty feels good, but it closes the door on new information. Probability keeps the door open, which is exactly why it's harder to sell on TV. Here's a small habit that changes how a decision feels once you start using it. Before something important, write down 3 outcomes: best case, most likely case, worst case, and put a rough percentage on each one. It won't make you psychic, What it does is force you out of the binary, will I succeed or not, trap, and into the more honest question, given everything I actually know, what are the odds? And can I live with the downside if I'm wrong? That's not weaker thinking. It's what thinking looks like when it's actually being honest about how much the future can't be known in advance. Here's a quick test. I'm going to ask you a simple math question, and I want you to answer it in your head before I give you the answer, because the way you answer it says something about how your brain makes every decision, not just this one. Quick one. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 together. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball? If 10 cents jumped into your head, you're in very good company. Most people answer that instantly, and it's wrong. If the ball were 10 cents, the bat would be $1.10, and the total would be $1.20, not $1.10. The actual answer is 5 cents. This isn't a trick question. It's a demonstration, first designed by the psychologist Shane Frederick, and later popularized by Daniel Kahneman, of something your brain does constantly without telling you. It has a fast mode that answers instantly using pattern matching, and a slower mode that actually checks the math. The fast mode usually answers first, and because the answer feels obvious, the slow mode never gets called in to check its work. That gap between feels obviously true and that is actually true isn't limited to arithmetic. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence in a meeting, and the instant read is, they're disrespecting me, maybe. Or maybe they misread a pause as you finishing your point. Or they're under pressure and not thinking about tone at all. The first explanation your brain hands you isn't reality. It's just the fastest story available. And the moment you accept it, you stop looking for a better one and start defending it instead. Physicians are trained to resist this. A good diagnostician doesn't lock onto the first plausible explanation for a set of symptoms. They generate several, then rule them out one at a time before committing. You can borrow that habit without going to medical school. Before you act on the first explanation your brain hands you, force yourself to write down 2 more. If someone doesn't call back, list 3 reasons, not 1. If a project misses its deadline, list 3 causes before you decide which one to fix. This won't slow you down as much as it sounds like it will. Most of the time, the third explanation only takes a few extra seconds to think of. What it buys you is a real chance of not acting on the laziest guess your brain could produce. We're halfway through, and so far every mistake we've covered happens in seconds. This next one is different. It's slower, it's quieter, and it's the one that took down a company worth over $30 billion at its peak. Hunt for the evidence that would prove you wrong. In 1975, a young engineer at Kodak named Steven Sasson built something that didn't exist yet, a working digital camera. It weighed 8 pounds, took 23 seconds to capture a black and white image, and worked. He showed it to Kodak's executives. As Sasson later told the New York Times, the reaction was, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." Kodak's entire business ran on film. A camera that didn't need film wasn't an opportunity to them. It was a threat to the thing that already worked. So for the next 2 decades, as digital sensors kept improving and consumers slowly started switching, Kodak kept its resources pointed at the film business that had made it one of the most valuable companies in America. By the time Kodak took digital seriously, the market had already moved past it. The company filed for bankruptcy protection in January 2012, done in not by a lack of talent or resources, but by the fact that the people running it kept looking for reasons the thing they already believed was still true. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, and it's one of the strongest habits your brain has. Once you've formed an opinion, you start noticing evidence that supports it and quietly filtering out evidence that doesn't, not because you're being dishonest, but because your attention has already picked a side. You can watch this happen in something as small as buying a phone. Decide on a model, and suddenly the 5-star reviews feel persuasive, and the 1-star reviews feel like they're written by people who just don't get it. The opinion came first. The evidence followed it home. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime partner at Berkshire Hathaway, has said for years that he won't let himself hold an opinion on something until he can argue the other side better than the people who actually believe it. Most people stop digging the moment they feel convinced. The sharpest thinkers do the opposite. The more sure they feel, the harder they go looking for the crack in their own reasoning. Here's the uncomfortable question worth asking yourself before any decision you feel confident about. What evidence would actually change my mind? If you can't answer that, you're probably not evaluating anything anymore. You're just defending a conclusion you already reached. Last one. And this is the technique that explains why you can know all 4 of the others perfectly and still make a terrible call at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday for no reason you can name. Stay awake for around 18 hours straight, and your reaction time and judgment start to resemble someone with a blood alcohol level around the legal driving limit, a finding from sleep researchers in the late 1990s that still holds up. You don't feel drunk, you feel normal. That's what makes it dangerous. The same decline happens without any sleep loss at all, just from making too many decisions in a row. Researchers call it decision fatigue. What to wear, what to eat, which email to answer, whether to reply now or later. Each one is tiny, but they draw from the same limited pool of mental energy. And by evening, that pool is running low. This is a big part of why late-day decisions skew toward whatever's easiest instead of whatever's best. More impulse purchases, more unnecessary arguments, more "I'll just start tomorrow." The fix a lot of high performers land on isn't more willpower, it's fewer decisions. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit daily for decades. Mark Zuckerberg did the same thing for years and said outright that he didn't want to burn mental energy on anything that wasn't Facebook. Neither of them thought clothing mattered. They thought their attention did, and clothing was an easy thing to take off the list. There's a second habit that does even more, and it costs almost nothing: a decision journal. Before a real decision, write down 4 things. What exactly you're deciding. Specific, not improve my life, but accept this job offer. Why? The actual evidence you have today, not what you're hoping happens. How confident you are, as an honest percentage, not 100. And then, weeks or months later, come back and grade the thinking, not the outcome. Did I miss something obvious? Did emotion push the decision more than evidence did? Would I run the same process again? Do this for 6 months, and patterns start showing up that you'd never have caught in the moment. Maybe you make worse calls late at night. Maybe you're consistently too optimistic about deadlines. Maybe a small win makes you overconfident for the next 2 decisions after it. None of that is visible without a written record. It's the difference between just repeating an action and actually learning from it. And those 2 things aren't the same, no matter how much practice looks alike from the outside. At the start, I said a good decision doesn't guarantee a good outcome, and a bad outcome doesn't prove you decided badly. That's not a technicality, it's the whole point. Good judgment was never about predicting the future correctly. Nobody can do that reliably. It's about making the most honest decision you can with what you actually know at the time, and then being willing to look back and check your own thinking instead of just checking the scoreboard. 5 moves. Separate what you know from what you're assuming. Think in odds, not guarantees. Catch your first answer before you trust it. Go looking for the evidence that would prove you wrong. Build a system so your judgment doesn't quietly degrade by 9 p.m. None of this requires being unusually smart. It requires noticing when your brain is taking a shortcut and choosing not to follow it every time. Your life isn't shaped by one dramatic decision. It's shaped by a few thousand ordinary ones that nobody, including you, thought were worth thinking twice about. You're going to be wrong sometimes. Everyone is. The only real variable is whether you actually learn something from it or just move on to the next guess. If one of these landed for you, let me know which one in the comments. I read them, and it usually tells me what to dig into next. See you in the next one.